All right, so we're going to have a bit of discussion about what's going on in the industry, where things are heading, the role of the center, the role of education, the role of government. And maybe, Don, just to start off with you, we've talked, as we were prepping for today, you talked about the grand challenge. What are we facing as a society? What are the issues around energy as we face demand for what energy provides? How would you articulate the challenge we face? And if you were meeting somebody who's maybe not deeply enmeshed in the energy sector, how would you frame the issue?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Look, let me start with a quick story to help frame it and help people understand where we are today and where we might have been. Also, we'll talk about the challenges we have in this whole energy transition that the whole world is talking about. I sat down with Vladimir Putin in 2003 at his dacha. We had a dinner at his dacha, and President Bush was there. And I looked at President Putin. I said, you've got a third of the natural gas reserves in the world. And President Bush kind of elbowed him. Vlad, did you know that? Did you know you got it? He kind of went, well, I'm not, yeah. So there were 4,500 trillion cubic feet of gas kind of in the world then. He had 1,500 trillion of it. So he got a third of the natural gas reserves in the world. And so think about the strategic advantage it gives him against the rest of the world. We'll talk now about kind of where we are today and what's happened in the last few years and what the challenges are, though, going forward. From 1973 to 2013, America was energy scarce. Some of you may not be old enough, but a lot of you are. Remember the oil embargo of 1973? And our production in America started declining in 73, and it continued to decline until about 2012 or 11. And so we went from being energy scarce to all of a sudden energy abundant. And that came from the innovation from the industry, the risk takers that I was talking about earlier, and a government that provides the environment to take risk, a free enterprise system, a system to be innovative and be willing to take those risks. And so all of a sudden we developed a technology that unlocked an amazing amount of reserves in this country, oil as well as natural gas. And so all of a sudden the game changed to where we, with energy abundance, it would strengthen our national security, our economic security, and our energy security, and strengthen our position in the world to protect our freedom and protect our democracy. And so that's what you start thinking about when you think about the challenges that Jay talked about that we have. Really, these challenges, not just to produce more oil and gas to put in people's automobiles or turn the lights on, but it's so that America continue to be a leader in the global industry and go into geopolitical discussions with a country that's abundant in this energy. So that's really what you're talking about, and the challenges is maintaining that abundance, maintaining that strategic position in the world. And here's what's happening in the world. When I had a conversation with Vladimir Putin, I knew there was about 6 billion people on the planet, and about half of them lived on less than $1 a day. That's a problem. But today, there's about 8 billion people in the world, on the way to 10 billion people. So not only more people, but people that are on the planet want more energy. 1.5 billion people are living in the dark. They want to live in the light. And so when you think about those big numbers and you think about this energy system that we have had for 100 years that has been delivering energy to the global economy, and you think about, we're going to change to something else. We're going to do it a different way. Really? You're really going to do it a different way and be comfortable that you can deliver affordable, reliable, and I will say environmentally clean energy? You think you really know how to do that? And so, my concern, I think the challenges are, Jay, is that as we look at the future and America for the first time, I mean, our energy policy for 50 years was stability in the Middle East. You wanted that oil to continue to flow. Now our energy policy is to continue to develop our own resources and be a leader in the world in this energy transition. And the energy transition, what I would say, we need to be careful. It needs to be thoughtful, orderly, well thought out, and make sure that, yes, we are going to be able to deliver affordable, reliable, environmentally clean energy to the world. And I'm convinced that we can do it, and one of the reasons I'm convinced that we can do it is right here in this institution. We got some of the smartest, brightest scientists, engineers, which is true in the industry as well. And so we can lead it, and I would just say the government needs to work with us so that we can lead it in an orderly, thoughtful way and not just start throwing ideas and money and everything else at it. I'm all in on renewables. I mean, Permian Basin, we got more wind out there than they have any state in America. We got solar farms getting built right and left out there. We're carbon capture, carbon sequestration. We're hydrogen. We're everything. But so anyway, to me, Jay, that's the challenge, and you got to think about it in terms of really national security and energy security, and think in terms of protecting our freedoms and our democracy. And I'm just hoping that America steps up. I'm one that's kind of worried about the whole kind of protectionism mindset, and we're going to do it ourselves. And I think we've got to stay engaged with the world. I think we got to continue to we got to step up and lead the world. And so it is. It's a big challenge. I think we're up to it, and I think a lot of the action is going to happen right here in Austin, Texas, on this campus. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Senator Don lays out the challenge, and you talked in the open remarks tonight about the importance of Texas as the energy state, and I would say we're the energy university. So, as you got this effort of the center underway, you were keenly focused at the very beginning on making this bigger than any one school or college at the university. What was the role of being interdisciplinary to be broader than, why is this not just a center in the law school or the business school or the engineering school today?
I think it is what makes us unique, that from the very beginning, we decided that you can't just be in the business without understanding what the lawyers bring and what they need to bring to you to do your business. And so we started it that way. And it was great to have that beginning for the business people to talk to the lawyers. And I had learned early on when I was general counsel of Republic Bank Corporation that the business people sometimes did not understand what you had to have on the legal side to do your business. And so that's been with me for a long time. And so we did it that way. But the great thing, Jay, is that we started having wonderful student programs. And we have a student advisory council, and I meet with them on an interim basis. We'll have a lunch or we'll have a meeting, and we try to include students in the symposium. And we have 135 students coming tomorrow. And it's the engineering students that we invited in that just are so excited. And we started seeing that interaction in a round table at lunch, and the engineering students would be pinging the business school students with questions and, okay, so how do you do this or that? And so we said, this needs to be bigger. It needs to be truly interdisciplinary. And when you look at all of the engineers that are in the high management levels of all of these companies, whether it's the renewables or whether it's oil and gas, it's the engineers that are the core. And so having them learn early on that as students, the engineering students learning to talk to the business students and the law students and see what they're learning and how does, Texas law is very different from most other states. The oil-producing states have much more in mineral rights and property rights. And so the engineering students would never hear that unless they were in the arena and talking about mineral rights. Oh, and so how does that work? And how do the regulations work? So it really became something that became more and more obvious. And we were so pleased when we started working with Dean Bonacaze about coming in formally, and our business school dean and our law school dean were so helpful in bringing him in. And I think there may be other schools that want to be a part of that as well, because that student experience is going to bring so much depth to a student's awareness of what an energy career can be. And it can be in all the sectors of energy, and it can be something that is entrepreneurial. And so I think the addition of engineering is what makes us unique of all the academic energy institutions. And where should we be doing the new things? University of Texas.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Senator. And it could be that the engineers were just happy not to be doing problem sets. So, Don, you're a one person diverse portfolio of an engineering degree and a business degree. Mm-hmm. And in your career in the business, how have you seen these fields come together in ways that were successful, whether it's building a team or building a company?
Well, first of all, Jay, I think, as you said earlier, I think my business credentials were most important. That was key. Look, here's how I think about it. As you mentioned, I was chairman of Energy Future Holdings, a power company in the state of Texas. We had, at the time, we had 2 nuclear power plants. We had 9 coal plants. We had a number of gas-fired power plants. We had transmission. We had retail. But we start a board meeting, and I would kick it off, and the first item we would talk about would be safety. And I would look around that room, and in that room would be our general counsel, would be engineers, would be CFO, would be others that had a business degree. And so this is a collection of people that you want to, you listen to that safety report, and then you go on to the business of making decisions, the big decisions of capital allocation and assessing risk, and which is the key thing that any CEO does or a board does, is being able to kind of understand the risk of any capital that you're getting ready to invest. And you want everybody's input. You want engineers' input, you want your general counsel's input, what kind of risks they may see, you want CFO's input. By the way, our general counsel was there with Stacey DeRay, and she's out there someplace. One of the brightest lawyers that I've ever been around, for sure. But look, it's so important. Okay, you're right. I think people get into this program and they'll get excited about energy, and they'll see potential careers in energy, and there certainly are, big time. And I think that it will lead to people understanding the terminology within the industry and the language of the industry, which is so important. Quick story, I had a young man come to me out of Texas. He had a business degree, and it wasn't a good time in the market. I think it was 2008 when it was, and so it was a tough time in the market. And he wanted to know if I had a spot for him, and I said, well, I'll find something for you to do, for sure. And he's in there doing some analytical kind of work. He was coming out of the business school. I said, have you been out on a frac job? No, I haven't been on a frac job. You need to go out there, get among the engineers and the operators. You go do it. Go get on a frac job. And so he did. He went and got a frac job. And he's continuing to kind of search for job openings. The industry was really beginning to take off. This was 2011, and Barnett Shale is really rolling, and this horizontal drilling is taking off, and so banks are looking for employees, and so we found a J.P. Morgan in Houston. They had an opening, so he went down to see them, and they started talking to him, and they said, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm working for Don Evans out in Midland, and started talking about the industry, started telling him about a frac job, and the guy said, you've been on a frac job? You really know the language of that? So here's a guy that knew the language, and they hired him on the spot. I mean, to get the interdisciplinary cross, so they know the language, know the lingo will be important. But look, I think this center is going to really stimulate a lot of interest in people getting into the industry, and I hope that we can continue to kind of keep these kids focused on what a big opportunity there is in the energy industry for the next far out as you can see.
Great, thank you. And one of the things that both of your careers speak to, and you've both hit on tonight, is how do you bring industry, government, academia together? And maybe, Senator, to start with you, what have you seen in the role of government? When's it gone well? Because we could probably, some of us can point to cases where maybe not quite so well, but where have you seen that partnership between industry and government really point us in a better direction?
From my standpoint, this is where Texas does it right. We have a Texas regulatory environment that doesn't say, here are all the rules. Here's what you can't do. Don't you do this or you're going to have a $100,000 fine. That's not their approach. Their approach, and Christy Craddock is going to be here tomorrow, our railroad commissioner, Bill Flores knows this too. Ours want you to succeed. They want the businesses to succeed. They want to show you how to do it right so you can succeed. I found when I was state treasurer that, I came in and the employees were saying, well, because the state treasurer collected tobacco tax, and they were just talking about penalizing all of these people that were not collecting enough of the tax rate. I said, wait a minute. We want these people to succeed. We want them to do the right thing, to pay the right taxes. We have to show them how to do it, and then give them the tools to do it right. And it was a whole new concept for them. And that's what we have now. We have built that in Texas, and that's why businesses move here, because we have a regulatory environment that's fair, but it's regulatory to do things right. And we have low taxes. We don't have government that wants to tax your business to death. We want to have the fair taxes, but we want you to succeed. We want you to hire people. We want you to have good jobs. And I think that's where we do it right in Texas, and why we are growing so fast with fleeing Californians that say, oh my gosh, they actually like business over there. And we do.
And Don, whether it's as business leader or secretary, where have you seen, whether it was in the Commerce Department or on the receiving end from the business side, where have you seen that partnership go well?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story around that. Kay's exactly right. I mean, government, what government's supposed to do is create the environment for the private sector industry to do what it does so well, which is create the wealth. And so getting the regulations right, the rules right, is so critical to creating that right environment for industry to take the risk and do the things they want to do. I had a simple rule when I was up there. Somebody bring me an idea, and I'd say, well, if it makes it harder for us to compete, it's probably a pretty bad idea. If it makes it easier for us to compete, it's probably a pretty good idea. I am one that absolutely believes that competition has been one of the real secrets of America's success. But my story is around Sam Bodman, who was Secretary of Energy in the second 4 years of the Bush administration. Sam was deputy for me in the first 4 years. Sam was, in fact, one of the really founders of the Energy Institute here in Austin on this campus. Unfortunately, Sam passed away a number of years ago. PhD in chemical engineering at MIT, taught at MIT for a number of years, built Fidelity with Johnson in the 70s and 80s, ran Cabot Corporation, first guy to build a plant in China. I mean, he was extraordinarily talented. And Sam, the second 4 years, I suggested to President Bush, I said, look, you ought to be energy secretary your second 4 years. And so Sam was, and Sam, the energy department's got the National Petroleum Council that it stays connected to. And Sam charged them to look at energy in America. And where are we? I mean, I want you to deep dive America where we are energy-wise. And they came out with a report in 2007, and the headline was Hard Truths. America's got to really face up these hard truths in terms of our energy resources. You know, there were some hopeful signs, some shales here, some other maybe offshore, and some big salt domes, but basically it looked bad in terms of the future. What was happening about that time was the Barnett Shale play was starting to really get going, so maybe we've unlocked something. But that's an example of government working with industry and listening to industry. I mean, industry is the one that's out there doing the work, deploying the capital, making the bets, taking the risk. And in this case, industry knows what's going on around the world, because these international companies are around the world, and they got a feel for it, and they also have a feel for those people that are living in the dark and people that are living below the poverty line, and so. But I think and I'm hopeful that the administration has the wisdom to sit down and listen to industry, and really, really draw from them. And I would say the University of Texas at Austin, and I would say the K. Bailey Hutchison Center, because what UT Austin does, it brings a trusted voice, an independent voice, also brings incredible talent. So they should be in the mix, and industry ought to be in the mix. And government ought to really sit down and listen to them and work through this with them in a thoughtful, orderly kind of way, and understand the challenges of the World Energy Association came out with a report not too long ago, and were two tables side by side. On the left side of the page was oil and gas reserves in the world. And the United States of America was number one. Russia was number two, and Saudi Arabia was number three. Because we've just found incredible, not only oil, but natural gas, which we were, back in 07 when the hard truths, we're importing gas. Now we're exporting gas. I mean, it's a whole different ball game. So, when you sit here and think about it, you say, wow, what's happened here is amazing, and what the industry knows what they're doing, and so sit down and listen to them and work through this with them. However, we're doing the other side, what I didn't say, the other side of the page was, rare earth minerals around the world, and that's China. They control such a large percentage of the rare earth minerals of the world, and if they don't own the minerals or control it, they process it. So, we just, again, national security, strategically thinking through this, let's make sure we know all the numbers before we just say we're going to go all in this way, and we're going to change this energy system we have over the next 10 years. It's just not practical. It makes no sense. What's hard to do is take the politics out of it. That's the problem. If we can get people to take the politics out of it and just, maybe not worry quite so much what the environmental community is saying, and really look at some facts and look at innovation, look at technology. Because I'm a believer that we can deliver it in an environmentally friendly way, environmentally clean way. It's going to take innovation and all that, but we got the talent to do it. But it is a big, big, big job. I have said, some people say that I think that I trust and know the world, know the industry. This is probably the biggest challenge that America has ever faced, is to solve this problem. And we can solve it if we set up and structure it in the right kind of way and lead on it.
Let's talk about maybe challenges at a more local, regional level. So obviously we all know the importance of West Texas and Midland to the sector and to the world. We took a big group out to Midland this week and came to see people, and they were in a really good mood. And the chancellor, I know, is out there today as well. What do you see, what's going on in Midland now? What are the challenges and what are the trends you're seeing out in West Texas?
Well, let me tell everybody about Midland real quick, or the Permian Basin, let me say, which is West Texas, southeast New Mexico. Now, if it was a country, it'd be the third largest producing country in the world. It's the largest secure supply of energy in the world. Oil, gas, wind, solar, all the other forms of it, we've got it, we're leading on it. And so there's a tremendous amount of activity going on out there. The group I mentioned earlier, Permian Strategic Partnership, was formed because McKinsey said in order to execute your plans, you need to move 250,000 people into the area. We looked at the schools, we looked at the healthcare system, both failing as far as I'm concerned, and you're not going to attract the talent that you need if you don't have good schools, quality healthcare, safe roads, all of that kind of, those basic things for quality of life. And so these companies are basically saying, we want to enhance the quality of life where we operate, where we work, not only for our employees, but for the citizens that live here. But we got to fix our schools, which we're working on. We got to build a stronger healthcare system, which we're working on. But the problem, the challenges are talent, and bringing talent in and keeping talent and retaining talent. Families will come out there and they'll look at the schools, and mom will say, well, I don't think, I'm not going to put my child through that school system. And so that's a big, big challenge for us right now. We'll conquer it. We're okay. An interesting statistic about Midland, I moved out there in '75 and the boom was on and a lot of young people going in there. But there are more 4-year-olds in Midland than any other age group. More 4-year-olds. So, I've never seen so many strollers. So it's just,
It's a pandemic.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. That's the answer. Good one.
We were at dinner in Midland, and I asked the person next to me, they're talking about school challenges.
Right.
And I said, do you send your kids to public or private? I said, you can't ask that in Midland.
Yeah.
It's like a delicate question that you don't want to talk about because it's such a thorny issue. Senator, and you both hit on it, but as we think about the way that things are evolving with renewables and in addition to oil and gas, how do you see this playing out? And what do you hope the role of regulation or government might be in that transition? And what gives you fear that might happen instead?
Well, I think certainly innovation in the batteries, which of course was started right here at the University of Texas, but it's the reliable, stable energy that wind and solar can give, and of course we are the leader there, but for an energy supply that fuels our economy has to be stable, and you have to be able to do it when you need it, have it when you need it. So I think the future is great for the wind and solar renewables, but also what we're doing, and others, we're not the only ones, but trying to make nuclear silos that are smaller so that it's not so expensive to build a nuclear power plant. Nuclear is the cleanest form of energy, and it can be the most efficient if once you get past the very expensive building of a real nuclear plant. But if you can build smaller ones that then can be efficient, it's clean, and I think we will be a leader in that. And hydrogen, as I have said before, I'm on the NASA Advisory Council. There are about 15 of us, and most of them are scientists and some astronauts. And so I go into the first meeting, and there is a professor at the University of Texas, and I'm going, there's somebody from the University of Texas that I don't know. And it's Dr. J.P. Clark, and his specialty is hydrogen. So I said, I want to go to your office when we get home. And we were in Washington. He said, oh, please do. I did. He is doing amazing things right here under our noses. So I said, we're having a wonderful seminar in September that we want you to speak at. And so he said, yes, he's going to speak tomorrow. But he's just a star, and it's hydrogen. And he showed us how they now have a hydrogen tank that you can put into an airplane, and it's all experimental because they haven't gotten enough miles. It'll go about 125 miles. Well, obviously they have to perfect that more, but that's right on. We're on the cusp of getting that. And then they're going to be able to fly big airplanes eventually with hydrogen, which is also clean. It's water. I mean, it's so exciting what we are doing right here, and it is part of the transition into clean energy sources that will be reliable, and we're doing that research and that looking ahead to be the leader there.
Great, thank you. And I want to talk a little bit more. Don, you mentioned scarcity of talent and the challenges trying to get talent.
Right.
And I think we've seen this, those of us, the deans and the faculty here trying to get students to understand the opportunities in the energy sector. But the other big input into production is also capital.
Right.
And my impression as a finance professor is there's been a big challenge with getting enough capital to flow into the sector given really the needs of the sector. What are you seeing from a capital standpoint? Are there signs of it letting up at any time? Or
Yeah, I think it is at some level. I think some realism is starting to get into the mix, quite frankly. I mean, we went through this period where, look, no more fracking, no more horizontal drilling. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels in 10 years. I mean, when the market's hearing that, I mean, do they really want to go invest in it? When you got a government that is continuing to bash the industry and continue to, which is, again, my judgment, everybody may not agree, but it's all political is what they're doing, but bashing the industry, but the capital markets, not sure, and so you saw a tremendous amount of capital move out of the industry. I mean, I think on the New York Stock Exchange or the markets, it got down to almost a historic low at one point. The amount of capital percent of the total market was in energy. That's letting up some. I think more people are starting to get realistic about that these oil companies are going to be around for a long, long time, for generations to come, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. So it feels like it's starting to lighten up some. And there's certainly been a lot of capital discipline that has been introduced into the industry. I mean, you know that, Jay, you've seen it. I mean, companies now, the shareholders want some money back. It's either increase the dividend or it's buy back some shares or something along those lines. But it feels to me like the capital's there. We have quite a bit of activity in Permian Basin in terms of acquisitions and at from pretty serious prices. So I think it's coming back, and I'm just hoping that government and politicians will think it's probably not helpful to be bashing the industry.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to this perception of the industry, I want to talk a little about our students. And Senator, you sent your son our way, and if he came back and said, "Mom, I'm thinking about going to the energy business," or "I'm thinking about going into oil and gas," what would you say?
Oh, I wish you would tell me that. Because I would be so excited at the opportunities, because I see in Texas what we have in all the realms. He's majoring in international studies here instead, so I'm happy about that. His time in Brussels gave him a real yearning to learn more and do more. But I think we can say to these students, and we can show them the different things. If they want some of the transitional energy, they want to be entrepreneurial, we can give them experience and activities to show how exciting that can be. And then we have great oil and gas, the traditional old sources that are not going away in 10 years, although that's against everything that you hear on the airwaves. It's not. But we can live together doing what will create an economy. And I just want to say from my experience, I love the security part of energy, because with the resources that we have, we can create jobs in America to help our allies. For the Europeans to be so strapped because the Russian lines are clearly not reliable anymore, it took them too long to figure that out. We've been trying to say you should not be relying on Russian oil, but they did learn the lesson. They now know that they have to look out, and they would rather trade with us than a country that isn't doing it as clean and good as we do. But we did, it took us a while, because it was 2015 when we first started being able to export natural gas. So we haven't been at it that long, 9 years. And so now we have the facilities to start liquefying and sending over, and I think we ought to produce like the devil to get that out to our allies, so they don't have to look to Russia, and they can help Ukraine, and they can be a part of the geopolitical economy that is good for us, because we'll have the jobs, we'll have the innovation, and it's good for them because they need that stable source of energy.
Let's go one level deeper there. I think that's really interesting. So I know tomorrow on the agenda is more of a discussion around geopolitics, but two things that have happened in the last few years that are important and worldwide are the pandemic, and then Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and what that's taught us about supply chains and the role of energy and national security. And it's really, I think, for some of us that have been farther away from it than you all have been, has raised it more into our consciousness. So maybe, Don, start with you. What is going to come out of the next 10 years or so? What are going to be lasting impacts of?
Yeah, no, there are going to be some big impacts. I don't think from the pandemic. Vladimir Putin called me in 2005 and asked me to come see him, which I did do. He was interested in me being the chairman of Rosneft, which is the oil company in Russia. In the conversation, he also talked about, America just ought to have a contract with us, and we'll make sure we're providing them oil. And I said, well, okay, I'm not so sure about that. At the same time, he was talking to Gerhard Schroeder, the Chancellor of Germany, and he made a deal with Germany and Schroeder, which we advised him against. It was when the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines were first being discussed and planned. We told Schroeder that was a bad idea. He went ahead and did it. Schroeder got on the board of Gazprom. He used to be on the board. But those two pipelines just got blown up. And Germany all of a sudden lost 50%, 55% of their gas supply. The whole gas market in Europe is changing upside down. We're one of the saviors for them because of what Kay just talked about. That now we're exporting a tremendous amount of gas. We need to build more facilities. So there are some fundamental structural changes taking place because of Russia's behavior in that part of the world. So I think that, and the other thing to point out about that in Germany, they got a mess on their hands right now because they didn't think about it thoughtfully. They listened to all the environmental groups over there. They shut down their nuclear power. Now they're trying to bring it back on. They made this deal with Russia for their gas. Those pipelines get blown up. Energy prices in Germany are going through the roof. So guess what happens? Industry leaves. I mean, they see their costs going up, and not only does industry start to leave, but new industry doesn't come in and invest because they see these incredibly high energy prices that they're having to deal with. So I'd say Germany is really the standout case of that, but the whole gas market in Europe is changing and structurally, and we're going to be playing a significant role in exporting gas from here. The amount of gas we've unlocked in America is just phenomenal. I mean, I made that comment about Putin earlier on. I mean, he used to have a third of the natural gas reserves in the world. I don't know, maybe he's got 5% now. I mean, because we've found so much here that can supply a big part of the world, and Europe will be part of that. So, yeah, there are structural changes coming out of this Putin's behavior. People kind of see him for what he is now, not that we didn't know before, but the pandemic, not so much. But yes, I think people are waking up to how important energy security is and energy abundance is, which is where we are, and we just can't mess it up.
So, last thoughts, Senator, on this, your senator and tonight, and you had obviously a prime seat, many prime seats, but being over in Europe, what comes to mind for you about what the next decade plus looks like in light of what's been happening?
It's what Don said in the beginning. America must be the leader of the free world. We cannot rely on any other country to assess a risk and then deter against it. America does that, and we then bring the Europeans in. But the Europeans will not take that initiative. It has to be us. And you said that. Because when we are the leader of the free world, we don't put American interests first. We are putting the security for all of us first. And it takes a united effort. It takes an alliance that will stick together to make a point. So I see that leadership as essential, that we stay strong, that we unite the big economies of the world to stand up together against any transgression that China might make, or Russia, or Iran, or North Korea. I look at the alliances that are being made now with the other countries, the sort of dark alliance, the BRICS, and then our allies, and clearly we have to keep ours united, and America is the only country that can actually do that. And when I was at NATO, and sometimes President Macron would say, "Oh, NATO is brain dead," France can be the nuclear umbrella for Europe.
Right.
Every other ambassador at NATO came to my door and said, "No, don't let them do that. You need to be the leader. You must be the leader and the nuclear protector for the world." And it's true. And that's what I have seen. I knew that in the Senate. I knew that we should be the leader, but until I really served in Europe, I didn't know how essential it was and how much it takes us to go out to say security is first, and that brings a good economy. The Europeans think of it as economy first. They want to keep trading with China. They wanted to keep getting oil from Russia. And they put security second. And that's the major difference that we must continue to lead.
Great. Thank you, Senator,
Thank you,
Secretary.
Jay.
Thank you very much. Have a round of applause.